Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of Kinversations. I'm John Armstrong, and I help the Ontario Kinesiology Association with their stakeholder and government relations. Our guests are Devin Blackburn, who is the current president of the Ontario Kinesiology Association, and Angela Pereira, who is the founder of First Line Education Incorporated. She's also a course creator and one of the instructors.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really going to enjoy this conversation today. And I'm happy to talk about the connections between the nervous system, mental health, and movement, and how they all fit together. So what I thought we would chat about is looking at a few different things that can influence significantly our mental health and how we move, and then the condition of our nervous system. And primarily those three things, very, very simple things to think about: hydration, breathing, and nutrition. So as we think about mental health, we are thinking about our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, and how they transfer into our actions. And as we think about the nervous system, we're thinking about how we upregulate the nervous system and how we downregulate the nervous system. And we primarily know about the autonomic nervous system, and that it has a sympathetic branch, which is the flight, fight, or freeze. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the rest and digest system. So those are the two systems that significantly influence our mental health. They significantly are influenced by movement. And then, of course, a big, big effect can be had on those two branches of the autonomic nervous system by hydration, through movement, through breathing, and also through nutrition.
How does movement impact those two systems?
So when we move really quickly, if we were involved, for example, in a CrossFit workout, if we were doing an Olympic lifting workout, if we were going for a run, we would be accessing our sympathetic nervous system. So the system that is going to increase our heart rate, increase our blood pressure, increase our breathing rate. And then ideally, after those workouts, we would be trying to enter into the parasympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system, so the rest and digest side. And it's appropriate through movement that we do upregulate the sympathetic system. And it's appropriate when we're finished exercising that we downregulate the sympathetic nervous system and get into that parasympathetic state. So it's a balance, and movement is a lovely way to really train those nervous systems. Now, we all know that there's movement programs such as yoga, and we can look at a mild version of hatha yoga. We can look at yin yoga. We can look at restorative yoga.
Restorative, yeah.
Yeah, those would help us access that parasympathetic rest and digest system. But we also, on the other hand, know about vinyasa and power yoga and those kinds of things that would be accessing a little bit more of the the sympathetic nervous system. So within the different kinds of movement programs and pathways, we can learn to up and down regulate our nervous system.
What do you think?
So sorry, go ahead.
I want to add really what, regulating and deregulation means returning back to balance, right? And I think one of the things that might be missed, or where a kinesiologist is beneficial, is understanding that we want the body to return to homeostasis, internal homeostasis, or balance. And we can use that knowledge of vigorous activity or a more parasympathetic stimulated activity like yoga to be able to apply that to any client or patient that we're dealing with. We need to understand, if we pull in that mental health, if somebody's dealing with high levels of anxiety and stress, we may not want to vigorously exercise them. We may want to take that approach of a more parasympathetic stimulating activity like a yoga, so that we're creating that balance within their body. We're returning their body or teaching their nervous system to regulate itself.
So is that what the goal is to, if you're, now sorry, I wish I knew the language better, but I don't know the language better. The one that excites you and then the one that calms you down.
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly it.
So the goal is that the one that excites you, you then use movement as a way to then bring that down, and then the one that calms you down, you then use movement as a way to bring it up. Is that what you're trying to do? Or like, what's the value of what's the value or the relationship of exciting each one of those systems?
So the way that I look at it, if I can jump in on this, is if it's a teeter-totter, for instance, and on one end is your sympathetic nervous system, and on the other end is your parasympathetic nervous system, we want to take a look at where the person is at already. Are they level? Are they at that what's called, John, homeostasis? That means internally their body is functioning at an optimal level and performing the things that it needs to perform in order to maintain health and wellness. Or are we out of balance? So again, if you see potentially, and jump in at any time, Angela, I'm thinking of like a CEO who's going to have a really high stressful job, who's on the go, and there's high demands, and there's tight deadlines, and everything is really, really stress based. You're going to notice that he has a higher level of stress, which means naturally his body has adapted to be highly active, or the sympathetic nervous system is going to be highly activated or constantly on. And so we want to be able to address the body and reteach it how to come back down to that homeostasis or that balance. So remember that teeter-totter. If one end is really highly charged, that sympathetic end, we want to be able to teach that body via movement how to regulate itself back to homeostasis or balance. So you're going to stay away from activating that sympathetic nervous system. It's already on active. That's its new autopilot. That's what it knows how to function on. And it no longer knows
what you're talking about.
That's okay. Angela does.
Oh, I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was going to lead into a question about that, which is that notion of, what if you, because of the nature of your job or your work or whatever, the person might want to get up to that state. So
Exactly.
you can actually, so what you're saying is you can actually use movement as a way to take you to the state that you want to be in. If you're at the excited state, but that's causing you stress as opposed to causing you energy, then you can use the movement to kind of to bring you down. But if it causes you, if it provides you with energy and dynamism, you might actually want to get there. So in which case you could then use the movement in order to help you get there. What is that, right, Angela?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if I had a client that was a high level CEO, I'm thinking of one of my clients who's a cardiologist, and the kind of high stress, high activity environment that he has to function in, his program would not be triathlon training. His program would not be, let's go for a run together. His program would be, let's do some yoga and let's do lots of downward dog movements, because we want your head down below your heart. We want to be able to get you back to that homeostasis, bring that high level of nervous system function back down. And then if I, on the other hand, let's say I'm working with a writer, I'm working with an artist, then I would say, okay, we're going to use some big dynamic movements to use the fascial system and wind it up, because our nervous system is present in our fascial system underneath the skin, on top of the muscles and the bones. So how can we access that fascial system with various kinds of movement to actually wind you up a little bit? So we're going to use those big 80s style warm-ups with swinging arms and legs and repetitive movements, in usually a swinging or a twisting or rotation, in order to bring the nervous system up a little bit and then bring you back down slightly before you start your workday, but teach you that you can upregulate, downregulate the nervous system with different kinds of movement. And you have to have an awareness about where are you at any given time. And here's some tools through breathing, here's some tools through movement that you can use to help to regulate, modulate that nervous system, so that you're optimizing your function and you're getting into, ideally, your flow state, which is the new kind of buzzword that people are talking about.
State.
Where is your flow? And is it up here? Is it down here? Can you move between flow states in order to function optimally in any number of situations?
I love that state. That's just the most fun.
Isn't it great? If you can find it.
Yes. What's I haven't heard the fascial system before. Is that
Ah,
so
okay. So
yeah, so I don't know at all what it is.
what that is. Okay, so it's another very intriguing area of research where in probably 2016, all of a sudden researchers started to get pretty excited. And we would think about Dev in our anatomy class where we went in to work with cadavers who, were largely prepared already, and the fascia, the skin that you might picture when you are working with chicken, perhaps, between the outer skin and the muscle belly of the meat, you've got this tissue, which is in some cases quite fragile, in other cases quite robust. And it's in this layer between the top layer of skin and the muscle belly area that actually carries nervous system signals.
Oh.
So yeah, so this is the spot where sensation is transferred, and a lot of the
movement patterning.
The movement patterning flows. Yeah.
Yeah. So I typically
patterning that doesn't what do you mean by that?
Okay, so I'm going to jump in on this, and Angela, jump in and correct me at any time, because not that I'm rusty, but I've been off for a little bit now. So I always describe it when I'm working with my clients, and again, most of my population is general population. They're just getting into movement, and they have a lot of fears and concerns about exercising and fitness, right? And so I've got to educate them on the difference between movement and exercise. So when I describe to them fascia, what I'm saying to them is it's kind of like saran wrap that wraps around your muscles, okay? But it doesn't just wrap around the muscle as a whole. So for example, John, in your thigh, you've got your quads, or 4 muscles that are going to make up the front of your thigh. Your fascia is going to wrap around each individual muscle.
Like a bag.
Like a bag, yeah. And it's going to wrap around the muscles as a whole. So if it takes, 3 different muscles to extend your leg from a seated position, you lift your foot off the floor and you extend at the knee, it's going to wrap around those muscles that are used to perform that movement. That's the patterning in your movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the patterning, this transferal of force and all of these different substances happen through the body, and often in the case of fascia, in cross-body patterns. So movement patterns, we're using one arm and the opposite leg, we're twisting, we're bending, we're transferring movement from one area of the body to the other. And it's this ringing action, this twisting, this bending and rotation that allows us to access the nervous system and create these bigger movements.
So that's where like your motor skills and stuff come from, or where does muscle memory? Now we're getting way out.
Yes, exactly. No, it's not off topic at all. No,
okay.
It's not at all. These are the systems that you train. Right. It's all good. It's all good.
So how's it not off topic?
Very good. So when you are looking at movement patterns, you're looking at coordinating upper and lower body movements usually. And so the signals you're passing from one area to the other through the muscles, through the fascia really. And that's what's helping the transferal of forces to help to generate those movements.
To get into that kind of mental wellness thing, we talked about how you can modulate your
nervous system
through movement by stimulating your nervous system in different ways, either to excite it or to calm it down. Again, I don't know the language.
That's perfect.
That's fine.
You're talking about the requirement, so not necessarily the requirement, but how the homeostasis is kind of like a balanced position that you want to be in. But then there's the notion of, okay, you might want to be up, but then sometimes that's stress, but sometimes it's not stress. So you want to get up to there. So if you're getting down into that kind of calm period, well, like when is that? You kind of think, well, that's a great period to be in. Boy, wouldn't that be terrific? When is that not good?
Very good question. Yeah. So it's not good if it means that you are not engaged enough in your task. Your energy level is too low for you to actually execute mentally, physically what you need to be able to get done. So in those kinds of states, you could use movement, you could use things like music, you could use things like mantras and certain thought patterns that help you to get into that flow state, and that level of flow state that could be higher, so that you can actually execute what you need to get done. So you're changing your nervous system stimulation in order to change your mind state so that you can do what you need to do.
So when you're down, sort of down here, kind of stuff, that can have an impact on kind of your concentration, and it just
right.
Okay. So
yeah, your concentration, your focus, your memory.
Right.
Sure.
So is it possible to reach the flow state from your standpoint when your system is excited here, when you're at homeostasis there, and when when your system is calmed? Is there flow? What regulates that flow state? Is it anything physical, or is it that's
I think it's a little bit of both. So you would have a consideration about proper hydration, proper nutrition, proper preparation, so that people don't hit a flow state right away. It's not like a switch. Maybe you do some journaling, maybe you consult your to-do list, maybe you have a particular motor pattern warm up. Maybe you have a particular conversation with somebody, a particular habit sequence or series that you go through so that you can get to the flow state. And so this transition into flow and out of flow, considering your mental health status, considering your physical ability, state of your nervous system, all of these things are going to be affected. So sometimes you need to, as you were mentioning, bring yourself down a little bit in order to concentrate and focus adequately. Sometimes you'll need to bring yourself up a little bit. And so working with people to get an idea of where do they optimally function. So their environment, the physical and mental tasks that they may need to be able to manage. And then what kind of tips, tricks, and tools do they have to allow them to come down or to bring them up to the place where they can ideally function. And it's going to be very, very different for different people. And that could be easily influenced by our hydration state. Our concentration, memory, focus is going to be much better when we're well hydrated. And also very simple things like looking at the amount of sugar we're consuming can have a huge impact on our ability to regulate our nervous system. So those are two big areas that as a nutritionist that I concentrate on with people very, very closely. And as kinesiologists, we're well able to talk to people about those two things as well.
So I guess probably we're just about out of time. The last question I have is this is a really different kind of conversation than what you would normally have when you're thinking about movement, or when you're thinking about sort of the exercise and physical activity kind of component. It's probably something that's more common in yoga, I'm sure. But the importance of this kind of integration and this kind of controlled that we're talking about is the kind of thing that should have more direct relationship into the mental health system and how the system actually works. When do you get, or when and how, or when could you, or should you get the opportunity to integrate this kind of training, this kind of a practice more formally into the system? When do you do that, Devin?
I would say immediately.
I would agree.
I would say right away. I'm potentially heavily biased, but I think that bias is more from understanding the importance of movement. Again, movement health and fitness are two very different things. And when we tie the movement component into mental health, if we're dealing with mental health issues already, then we're out of that balance. So immediately we need to be taking a look at learning how to, and having somebody teach you how to regulate both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system based on your individual environmental influences, not just being the environment, but where you work, your levels of stress, what is your personal life like, what is your nutrition like, what are all these components, your social health, your psychological health, what are all
your
of these
sleep quality,
your sleep, all of these things can be influenced via movement. But to me, it needs to be looked at immediately, because until we can get you understanding how to regulate yourself, and understanding you can do that via movement, and understanding how to activate sympathetic, parasympathetic back to homeostasis, or, you know, if I need this level, how do I get up a little bit or down a little bit, or whatever the case may be. That needs to be immediate. You know, I would like to see that happening in physical education in elementary schools. That's how immediate I think that it needs to be. This is something that everybody, to me, should understand how to be able to regulate themselves, and understand that you do that via movement in the different types of movement. So immediately.
I agree.
Yeah. What do you think, Angela? Is this adequately integrated into the mental health system?
I'm not sure. I don't have kids of my own, so I'm not sure what's happening there. But I would say
the mental health system overall.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things we need to focus on, as Devin pointed out, is improving awareness in young kids, and starting with, what are you feeling, and identifying feelings with sensation. So putting labels on sensations to teach children how to be able to speak about what they're feeling inside. And so what is their mind state? What is their physical state? And being able to have them talk about those things and learn how to change those states through movement, through talking, through nutrition, through some self-care in terms of being able to relax and lower their nervous system stimulation. So they're realizing when they're a little too high, and also when they're a little bit low, do they need some time alone, or is it actually time to stimulate that nervous system a little bit with some laughing, with some movement, to bring them up to a level where they're just a little bit more functional with the rest of the world. So that needs to be taught as soon as children start to become aware of feelings.
Right. That's terrific. That's all the time we have. Boy, this was a great conversation. I learned a ton. I love learning stuff. So this has been amazing. I would like to thank Devin Blackburn, President of the Ontario Kinesiology Association, as usual, Devin, for joining us. This has been great. And Angela Pereira, the founder of First Line Education. Boy, you've got a great roster of classes and courses that you and your team offer, Angela. And so
Thank you.
Have a look and to brush up on your skills. This has been Kinversations. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye for now.